to bring rates closer to those predicted at sanction. So I'd now like to invite Minister Coady to provide her comments on today's update.
Thank you, Premier. We now have the cost and schedule for the Muskrat Falls project, originally sold to the people of the province as a $6.2 billion project. We now know it will cost $9.1 billion, and that's before financing. As a new government, we have worked diligently to open the books on the Muskrat Falls project, to ensure transparency, and to put the project on track. One of the first acts of this government was to engage EY to review the project and provide independent analysis of the numbers. In its interim report, EY informed government about the material risks and issues that were not reflected in the September 2015 forecast and provided recommendations to improve project governance. The overall conclusion of the EY review was that the September 2015 forecast was not reasonable. In short, the cost, schedule, and associated risks for the project were underestimated. EY's final report will be completed and made public once negotiations with contractor Astaldi are complete. Today's numbers would mean extra costs for electricity users. However, to ensure rates remain competitive, our government has made the commitment to offset the electricity rate increases resulting from the Muskrat Falls project. We have directed Nalcor CEO to find options over the next 4 years to ensure rates are as low as possible and competitive. We must ensure reliability of power, which will be done through the Muskrat Falls, and we must keep rates as low as possible. We have confidence that Mr. Marshall, a knowledgeable, experienced, and competent CEO, will find solutions in the 4 years before first power. As Mr. Marshall said earlier, and we have said previously, stopping the project is not an option. We have $6.7 billion in contract obligations and a contractual commitment to Emera, as well as our own energy needs. As the Premier has indicated, transmission lines and associated infrastructure are projected to be in service mid-2018 to transmit power. First power generation at Muskrat Falls is now scheduled in fall 2019, with full power expected in mid-2020. In a short 6 months, our new government has engaged EY to provide an independent analysis of the Muskrat Falls project and make public its interim report, transitioned to CEO Stan Marshall, appointed an interim board of directors, and ensured we have an updated cost and schedule for the Muskrat Falls project. Next, the Independent Appointments Commission will be moving ahead with the selection for Nalcor's new board of directors. The commission has been provided a list of competency requirements. I want to recognize the many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians working on the project and to thank them for their efforts. In the past 6 months, we have been diligent in our efforts to get the Muskrat Falls project on track, and under Mr. Marshall's leadership, we are the best stewards possible to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Ball, we've heard Mr. Marshall describe this as a boondoggle. Would you agree with his assessment?
Mr. Marshall's language is a little more colorful than mine, as you would expect, but what I do know is that this project provides or gives the province a number of challenges. And for us, we accept the responsibility now with our new CEO, and certainly with my minister, actually to deal with those challenges. And we will deal with them with the knowledge that, number one, what Newfoundlanders and Labradorians expect from all of this is that they have reliable power, so when you flick that switch, there's power available for you. And number two is that you're able to do that at a competitive rate. So it's a challenge for us, and we accept this challenge and certainly look forward to working with Mr. Marshall to actually make sure that we have competitive rates and reliable power for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
What's your idea on where the money or that offset might come from? I mean, what are you looking at now? Can you give us some ideas to where the hope lies?
Well, we're going to, absolutely, we're willing to explore whatever options that we have available to us. As you know, that I've said for many years now, the sale of surplus power would be included and would offset the rates for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. They're paying for 100% of the power, so it would be a fair assumption to believe that they should get the value of that, and that would be reflected in their rates. So that's one option that we have. But we know now that that is we're going to need other options. So we've directed Mr. Marshall. We've looked at things. As I said, what's important for me is not the net income of Nalcor, is making sure that we have competitive rates in place and making sure that we have reliable power. So we have 4 years to responsibly look at all the options that we could have available to us, and we will be doing just that because, as I said, the important thing is competitive rates and reliable power.
Follow up there. You mentioned, in terms of the offset, the sale of surplus power. That's been mentioned before. It seems to have been given a little more weight in the past. You said, but you know now. So is it only now that you're giving an understanding of the degree to which that offset, that those revenues would be able to offset power rates?
Well, there will be some. The exact number, of course, this is 4 years away. So making sure that we have competitive rates, and we know now that will not be enough. We will need to do more. And so we will be exploring whatever options that we have available to us. 4 years is quite a bit of time, so we will take that time to explore whatever options that are responsible and that we have available to us. And I'm confident that we can put measures in place to mitigate the increased rates for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
One of those options that Mr. Marshall talked about was talking to the federal government about increasing the amount of the loan guarantee. What sort of discussions have you had with the federal government, and what sort of response have you had?
Yeah, we've had discussions on a number of issues. I said this in the past. We've got a number of files that are open with the federal government. We saw an example of this yesterday with the core science building as an example with Memorial University. That was $100 million. But I also think that people know me and those that have followed me, that those discussions and negotiations that we were having with no matter who they would be, in this particular case with the federal government, we've opened up these discussions and they will unfold as discussions normally do. And as we get close to finalization of any discussions that we're having, well, then we'll put those numbers out there. And we've already, like I said, the meetings have started. And we'll just let this process unfold as they should.
How realistic though an option do you think that's going to be? Does the federal government seem open to this idea? Is it going to take a lot of work to get there?
Well, we're still having discussions, so that means that we're still at that table. A few weeks ago, we were at a table discussing $100 million around the core science building, and that was delivered yesterday. And there are other discussions that are ongoing on many files right now that could have benefit to the province. One of them is a federal loan guarantee, and those discussions right now with natural resources, the minister's involved as well, the CEO is involved, and so we'll let the process unfold exactly how it should. And when we're in a position to have a news conference like we did yesterday, then on whatever those issues would be, well then that's where we will be.
I have 2 quick questions. Premier, do you feel now, looking back, during your time in opposition, could you have pushed harder to prevent overturning?
Well, I don't think you could have pushed any harder. I mean, we were very vocal on this, on a number of different issues. Number one about the power purchase agreement and other things. About some unrealistic pricing in oil prices as an example and so on. We led a filibuster, as you know, on 2 bills that were associated with Muskrat Falls. So, we did the work that we could do at the time. And right now, as government, as Premier, we accept the responsibility for where we are. We've inherited this project. We've inherited the challenges that comes with it. And we're going to take those challenges and we're going to put our best effort into making sure that we have, as I said, reliable power and competitive rates. We're going to do that. We're going to do all of this working, with a great close working relationship with the CEO and, with the direction that we've been giving him right now. We'll explore and continue to explore whatever options that we have available to us.
When you hear people say things like, why should we trust anything that we hear from Nalcor at this point, what's your response?
I understand that, and this is a very complex project. We've seen that, and so right now I completely understand why people would be, would look at this project and say, listen, I've heard this before, it's political, and so on. But we are moving this project closer to the finish line, and right now with the commitments that's been made, the dollars that have already been spent, there's no different. I explained this to someone this morning, as when you start the house, the foundation, there's a lot more risk when you lay your foundation than it comes to by the time you put your cabinets in. So it's as we get closer to the finish line, there is less risk, and you have a better understanding of the risk. And also, we know now that from start line to where we are now to the finish line, there's more experience on this project. Plus, added to that, we have a CEO that's had a tremendous amount of experience working in this environment for many years, and we're going to actually build on all of this. And so there's less risk now simply because of where we are in schedule and the experience that we've learned with the years working on this project.
If I may add to that, Mr. Premier, I think as well, and it is difficult for people when they're hearing this new news, I think over the last 6 months we've had the independent analysis by EY. We've been very open and transparent of how, looking at the project, looking at some of the milestones and challenges, reviewing everything. We have a very competent CEO in Stan Marshall who's done another review of this project. I think as the Premier said, we're getting closer to the finish line on the project, and therefore we're more solid in our numbers and as transparent and as open as we are with everything that we are learning as we go.
Why is the EY report contingent on the Estaldi negotiations?
I'm sorry?
Why is the EY final report contingent on the conclusion of the Estaldi negotiations?
Because we want to make sure that we have all the information possible to put before EY, so they can do their analysis of this. And the negotiations are continuing with Estaldi. Mr. Marshall has been involved in those and is doing the work around that. And we're going to wait till after that has been completed, or near, as complete as possible, before we have EY do any more further analysis. We want to make sure that we've got the final when they do their work.
Sorry, if Muskrat Falls wasn't the cheapest option, what do you think the motive was of the Tories to go ahead with this project?
I wasn't at that table. My job now is to working with the CEO and others to get it finished. And so what motivated people back in 2012 is certainly not what's motivating me. My motivation is simply, as I said so many times now, is reliable power at competitive rates. We're into this project right now. We've analyzed it, and we've come to the conclusion that we've got to see it. It's got to be finished based on the obligations and the commitments that have been made. And so we're going to see it past the finish line. Underpinning all of this will be reliable power and competitive rates.
It's long been suggested, though, that this was a legacy project for Danny Williams. Is that becoming more clear for you?
I've often referred it to as a legacy fund, as an example. This is our legacy fund. This is our sovereignty fund, as an example. Well, we know that that is not the case right now, because right now we will need to put as much mitigation, and that will include, things from Nalcor that are tangible in terms of dollars and cents, not just the sale of surplus power. The responsible thing to do as Premier and as Minister and as CEO is that we explore all those options, because I want the legacy to be one of reliable power and competitive rates, regardless of where Nalcor is in the next 10 years or so. This is a project that we need to get finished. It is a project that impacts our province right now, and we've got to make sure that we put the leadership in place to get it past the finish line. Regardless of what happened in the past and what motivated people in the past, we've accepted the challenge. Our motivation is just that, to get it finished.
So are you looking at, sorry, just for clarification here, are you saying you're looking at selling off Nalcor interests in other areas in order to pay off?
No, I didn't say that. What I said was this project, always built into the business plan, there would be income that would come from Muskrat Falls, even just with equity as an example. So we got to explore all those options. And we've got a few years to be able to deal with this right now. As I said, it's important. We're focused on rates, and we're focused on reliability of power right now, and how it impacts Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
What does success look like there? What do rates look like if everything goes right and you're able to mitigate as much as possible, as far as you can see it right now?
What it looks like to me is that we remain competitive and that we have reliable power. That's success. And what it takes to get to that successful conclusion, these are the options that we will be exploring.
You mentioned equity options a moment ago. Are you looking for perhaps an equity partner to join the Muskrat?
No, what I said was the equity being what government would have to put in. By government putting in that equity, impacts the financial, the budget of Newfoundland and Labrador. And so we, as you know, we're borrowing for that right now, and there's a substantial amount of borrowing left to do. So that's the equity that I was referring to.
Premier, many of the key people who initially did the analysis on this report, who have been building the project, are still in place. For example, people like Gilbert Bennett. Do you have confidence in many of those people who created many of the problems that we're looking at today being able to see this to completion?
My job is to have confidence in one person, at Nalcor, and that's the CEO that we've asked to lead Nalcor, not just Muskrat Falls. I will use then and rely on the judgment of the CEO that we've put in place to actually make the best decisions for the operation of Nalcor. There is no reason at all for me to actually not be confident in the people that that Stan Marshall would want around him. And he has my confidence, and we have a very good working relationship right now, and I rely on his opinion to make sure that he will put in place the best management team. Not my job to interfere with the day-to-day operations at Nalcor.
I know it's a complicated answer to give, but is there even a ballpark dollar figure that could be estimated as to how much it would cost today to halt the project? Just a ballpark dollar figure.
We haven't seen that number.
Well, we know that we have $6.7 billion in contractual obligations. We know we have a contractual obligation to Emera, and we also know that we need power. So you can add those together, I guess, and get that number. But it wouldn't. There's not a magic number. It's all this combined.
And we haven't really seen the details on that, have we? So aren't you sort of putting ratepayers back in that position of just trust us?
Details on what, Sue?
Contracts, the breakdown, I mean, that $6.7 billion in contracts and committed spending, we haven't really seen how that breaks down. We don't have a figure to compare how much it costs going forward to halting. There's really not the detail, is there, to enhance trust here?
Well, where we were with the last numbers at 7.6 and where we are today at 9.1, that's what we're releasing. These are the numbers. So if someone was coming in to do an audit on the Nalcor books, which is what they do, of course, and so we've opened it up with the information that we have available to us, and you'll have quarterly reporting, the due diligence that you see with any particular company the size of Nalcor. So that's what you're relying on right there. It's the information that has been put out there, and these, of course, are done in a responsible way because you have professional people that do that job in coming in and doing the appropriate auditing and oversight that's required. So that's what you're relying on. If individuals are coming to the point where they want to see every single invoice and every single check that's paid, that's what auditors do, and that's what you do when you release the information on a quarterly basis.
But at the same point, sorry, it's been previously requested that contract figures, that numbers on individual contracts be released so that people can see the change on a specific item on the project as to what was expected and what was the actual. And maybe we could then identify ideas that we could pursue in terms of where dollars might have been spent that shouldn't have been spent and figure out who was responsible for them. So are you going to release those individual contract figures at any point?
Well, what you see so far is what was released this morning is it was been broken up into a transmission project and then into the production project and all of that. So, there are a number of different contractors that are involved in the day-to-day business of this project. So what you see right now, I think you've had a lot more information that are available even now in terms of individual projects where the cost variances have been in the last few years. So there's quite a bit of information out there if people are interested in drilling down to, every single contractor that's out there. I guess, that's a different process. It's very timely. But right now there's quarterly reporting at Nalcor and the numbers on an individual basis in terms of how the project is broken up. These are all out there now.
What I'm saying is that people are interested, they have asked for it, will you release that?
Some of this information, as you know, will be released, but some of it is commercially sensitive as well. And so as part of the process, access to information with Nalcor, as it would be with government, what we can release under those guidelines, obviously that information goes out there.
Mr. Marshall, slightly different topic here. We saw through emails released to access information to the Telegram that Mr. Sturge, your CFO, was one of the people who was busy trying to dig up dirt on the man who appointed you, Mr. Ball. Do you think that's acceptable behavior for the CFO of a Crown Corporation?
He was directed to provide emails and information that was available. He did it as he was directed to do. He personally wasn't trying to do anything, dig up dirt or anything like that. He was just trying to do his job as requested by members of the board of directors. He can't be faulted for doing the work he was directed to do by his board.
So you have no problem with his behavior?
He personally, no. But in terms of digging up dirt on anybody, I have a lot of problems with that.
Mr. Ball, a slightly different topic. We've seen the Brexit vote today. How concerned are you about the impact on the economy in Newfoundland and Labrador with what's happening over in the UK?
Well, as you see with, I mean, the biggest impact, I guess, that people would be, alluding to would be what the impact would be on seed and so on. So, right now this is early days, and we'll see where this all unfolds. But this is really a national problem as well, and for us as a province, we'll be included in all of those discussions. But these things kind of got away. They settle them things out. They find a way of settling out. So I'm not overly concerned about this today. I'm more concerned about where we are with the Muskrat Falls project.
You mentioned earlier that discussions had already begun regarding the extension of the federal loan guarantee. When did those discussions begin?
The federal loan guarantee, as there was a full slate of things that we're discussing with the federal government, and we opened up those discussions, a few months ago, and so the federal loan guarantee is one option that we have available to us, as well as many other options. So, a few months ago.
You met with your federal cabinet?
As I said, these discussions will happen at the appropriate tables, and the folks that are at those tables, I've already mentioned that Natural Resources would be involved. It's fair to assume that that Minister Foote is involved as well, but I'm not going to negotiate, into public where we are with all of this. As I said yesterday, we made an announcement at the university about $100 million. These came at the end of many meetings as well, no different than the $27 million in the deferment of the equalization payment and so on. So we'll let the process unfold, and we'll see where this all lands.
I was hoping to just bring it back to that individual ratepayer for a moment in terms of the Muskrat Falls costs that we're looking at. The degree to which the increases are projected at this point, without knowing what mitigation might be successful at the end of the day, is probably going to cause a great deal of distress. I'm sure you understand. I'm wondering, can you give people any sense as to, I guess, the seriousness of this? I mean, where do you see this putting our province at the point in time when Muskrat Falls comes online?
Well, I'm very confident we can get there, and that's the so the confidence in putting mitigating initiatives in place. I'm confident we can do this. As I said, it's about reliability, it's about competitive rates. I'm confident that we can get there, and I also know we've got some time now to actually explore all those options. So if there's a message that I want to get out there today, is that we're focused on mitigating those rate variances. We're disciplined to get there, and we will explore whatever options it takes to make sure that we are competitive with those rates. We've got a lot of experience here with Mr. Marshall. We've got a commitment here as Premier to get there. We've got the Minister here that will be heavily involved in all of this, as well as we have a government that's committed to do this. We'll accept the responsibility. We've inherited this project. We inherit the challenges that come with it, and we will do the best we can to make sure that we have all those mitigating initiatives in place so that we remain competitive.
Would the province be willing to forego some of the dividends that it's entitled to in order to lower rates?
Peter, I'll take that as one option, and we'll explore that with probably another 10, 20 more that will come over the next 3 or 4 years. But, whatever options are out there, we want to explore them because it's the responsible thing to do. And this is the type of discussions that we will have on whatever those options will be.
Has there been any talks with Newfoundland Power to see if there's a role that it can play in the Muskrat Falls project?
These are very early days right now, and I have not had any discussions at all with anyone really, except Mr. Marshall, on what we would use, what options we have available to us.
Would you consider that an option, though, going to Newfoundland Power to find some kind of an arrangement?
Actually, I might even come to you. Who knows? But I think there are a number. We will do this in a responsible way. And what the best options are for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to make sure that we have competitive rates and that we have reliable power. That's what we will do. And that, as I said, we will have to explore those, whatever the opportunities will be.
And I think you've already heard from Mr. Marshall on some of the things, and we talked to you this morning about the loan guarantee. Those are the initial things that we're looking at. You've gone down a whole different path that, you know, may or may not be explored, but I guess in the early stages of this, we're looking at all the options. But most importantly, you know, anything with the excess sale of power, we've already committed to. We're looking at opportunities with the federal government. We're looking at other opportunities, as Mr. Marshall spoke about. Those are the early days things that we're looking at. But as the Premier said, we have 4 years to kind of explore other avenues as well. So we'll do that.
In certain fields, though, 4 years cannot necessarily be a lot of time. For instance, one of the things mentioned this morning was long-term contracts, deals where we could bring in large-scale power users, and anyone that's involved in that level of an operation is usually making a decision that would have more of a lead time than 4 years per se on some of these.
And we're aggressively pursuing that. I know Mr. Marshall's aggressively pursuing those options at this point in time.
So you've reached out to companies at this point?
Mr. Marshall?
No, at this point, in the last 2 months, I've focused entirely on looking at where we are and bringing forward the best cost estimates. So it hasn't been enough time to do that. So today, we met one milestone in sharing with you the best information we have. And going forward now, we will start to focus more and more on the long-term things. Obviously, bring you up to date, making sure now we're well positioned to complete the Muskrat Falls project, finish strong on that, then look at the other options.
Premier Ball, to those who say, look, this thing could bankrupt this province, what would be your response to
It's not going to bankrupt this province.
that? How do you know?
It will not bankrupt this province. And as Premier of this province, I will not bankrupt this province. And I can assure you here, there's a man that came out of retirement with the same commitment that I've made. And I can assure you that we have a minister here that has that same commitment. Good.